Did you see that he is now quietly auctioning off parts of the border wall that Trump had constructed during his administration?
Are you kidding me? The
No.
border wall that we already paid for, the
Yes,
taxpayers? Oh,
that's
that's
the
nice.
one. Yes.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken.
There is so much shit going on right now in the world.
Oh my God, I know.
Like, I couldn't even figure out what do we talk about because it's like we could go in a million different directions.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen today because there's so much shit I want to talk about.
Yeah,
And like it's so fucking hard to keep up. I'm sorry. There's just so
it
much.
is. Well, so we're going to have to touch on Maui again. We could do that later because, like, I just am so invested in this. Like, I don't know why, but I cannot stop looking at Maui stuff. So I feel like I'm kind of behind with the rest of the news, but I have noticed that like all the mainstream stuff that comes through my feed is talking about Biden having these like pseudonyms.
Yes.
That's how you say it, right?
Yeah,
Pseudonyms?
pseudonyms. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. But yeah, James Comer, the House Oversight Chair, I guess he has sent a request to the National Archives. I think this was like last week during, I want to say Wednesday, to hand over unredacted records of President Biden using the pseudonyms during his vice presidency. And I was like dying laughing because it's like J.R. Beware. And I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? Like Hunter, like Biden Jr., beware, like look
Beware.
out. Yeah. And then the next one was like Robin Ware. And I'm like, does he think he's like Robin Hood or something? Like, and then the last one, Robert L. Peters, the very first thing I thought of was remember when people were like looking through the Hunter Biden laptop and they saw that Hunter Biden had Joe Biden's contact saved under the name Pedo Pete. And
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, like that was one of his pseudonyms. I mean, obviously not like the pedo part, but I was like, interesting. So I think this will be fun to see what all they have going on with that.
Yeah, but here's something I didn't realize was like this whole thing with pseudonyms was apparently a total theme during the Obama administration. And there was a Breitbart report that recently came out that not only did Biden have these alias names, but Obama, Hillary Clinton, and several other officials in the Obama administration also did, which allowed them all to communicate secretly. And I guess Obama frequently used the alias Obama 725, which
That's
doesn't seem
not
very,
really a good alias.
yeah, it's not really creative, but okay. But Hillary had two different alias addresses. One was HDR22 and the other was HROD or HROD 17. And this was when she had that private email server and network set up in her home during that whole fucking debacle. So like none of her emails were accessible by Congress. And so she and her aides could easily swap emails with the Clinton Foundation, world leaders, and basically whoever the fuck she wanted to communicate with. So it wasn't just Biden.
One of these days, maybe this will be a good Patreon episode. We should do an episode where we go over her emails because back in 2020, I got into it a little bit just because I didn't know what else to do. I was like stuck at home. And holy shit, there is some deep, dark stuff that sparked that whole Pizzagate pedophilia debacle. That was what started like her emails. So I would love to go back, like knowing everything I know now and kind of looking at those again. But it's like, of course, nothing ever happens to them. Just
No,
Trump.
but that's also the shit that wasn't destroyed. Like imagine what was on all the shit
Right?
that's destroyed.
I know. I know. Well, and it's interesting that you say like Obama and Hillary because I came across something the other day and it caught my attention because we're always talking about people pulling the puppet strings with Biden. And this woman was like, I firmly believe that it's Obama. And she played this video from like right around the time Trump got in there and they asked if he would ever like want to be president again. And like, it was just some random question. And he was like, no, I wouldn't want to deal with that again. But I guess if I could be in the basement, like in my sweatpants, just like talking through a headpiece to someone else, I would totally do it. And she's like, I think that's what's happening because I guess when you look at Joe Biden's staff, it's like all Obama people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't really know that. Like, I had a feeling, but I didn't know that so much of his staff is in the White House right now.
Yeah. And if I honestly think that that has been happening, that Obama has been, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's the fucking Cobb Mafia running this country.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like basically Obama and Hillary, and Biden's the puppet. But if he is in the basement, like telling Biden what to say, then that's gone awry because the shit that comes out of Biden's mouth, like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't imagine anybody is telling him to say that stuff. I mean, he's gone so fucking off script. And like, speaking of Biden, did you see that he is now quietly auctioning off parts of the border wall that Trump had constructed during his administration?
Are you kidding me? The
No.
border wall that we already paid for, the
Yes.
taxpayers? Oh,
That's
that's
the one.
nice.
Yes. And so, the day Biden took office, he basically stopped the border wall construction. And you and I have talked in length in past podcast episodes about what a shit show our border is. But now Biden is selling off parts of the border wall. I read an article on Saturday in the Epic Times, and there are articles all over mainstream news outlets as well. And it was saying the Defense Logistics Agency, which is part of the DoD, they've confirmed that excess border wall materials are up for sale on an online auction site called GovPlanet. But these materials are just being listed very generically, like listed as, quote, steel tubing and sticks for industrial construction. And some of the parts are being just very vaguely identified as, like, quote, square structural tubes. So there's no mention of them being border wall materials, but a spokeswoman for the Pentagon, Rainey Brunson, she told the Daily Caller that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is disposing of excess border wall materials, and this is all in accordance with the federal acquisition regulations. And then the Army Corps of Engineers Lieutenant Colonel Devin Robinson told the Post that they've already disposed of around $154 million worth of border wall materials out of a total stockpile worth $260 million. And the Daily Mail reported that since April, this online auctioning site, GovPlanet, has sold over 80 lots of steel square structural tubes, which were basically supposed to be the vertical supports in the border walls panel. And they've made over $2 million off of this. And then this past Tuesday, officials sold over 700 of these 28-foot hollow beams, and they sold them in like 5 separate lots. And GovPlanet is saying that there are 13 more lots that are going up for sale on August 23rd and August 30th. Stephanie, this is fucking millions of dollars worth of unused border wall components. And what's even more fucked up is there was an investigation by the Armed Services Committee that found that the Pentagon has been spending $47 million a year to store these panels and other elements that were supposed to be used for the border wall, that Biden fucking refuses to secure. And meanwhile, we continue to have thousands upon thousands of criminals and terrorists and drug smugglers and human traffickers coming into our country illegally every fucking day. And I don't know if you saw this, but last Tuesday, there were reports of heavily armed Mexican cartel members crossing the border into Texas with like full fucking gear on and visible weapons, and none of them were apprehended. And
What?
like, yeah,
That's alarming.
no shit. And it's like, everyone's so focused on other crises going on in the world because, come on, the entire fucking world is on fire. There's so much shit happening. So there's not a lot to talk about the border crisis lately. But according to data from US Customs and Border Protection, even though Biden likes to think that ever since Title 42 ended that we don't have a border problem, but border crossings in July were up more than 30% along the southern border. And why is Biden now deciding to sell off these border wall materials for auction?
That's what
Well,
I'm wondering.
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a Republican sponsored bill that's part of the annual defense appropriation package to secure the border, and it's called the Finish It Act. And this would basically force the extension of the border wall by the federal government, or the feds would have to send the unused border materials to border states like Texas so that they can use the materials to build the wall. So instead, Biden is purposely selling off these materials at auction to prevent the fucking wall from being built.
I'm
Like,
surprised he's not sending it to Ukraine or Jordan so they could have their border security, because that's important, but it's not important for us to have ours.
yeah, exactly. And like, do we need any more proof of how fucking evil this administration is?
Well, here's the thing. Ever since the Maui thing, like more and more people have been waking up online, and a lot of people are saying, like, you know what? The government is not going to help us. The Republicans aren't going to help us. The Democrats aren't going to help us. Like, it's up to we, the people, to do something about this, because clearly, like, if they haven't stepped in and removed this guy already, are they really going to do it now?
Right.
And, now they're saying that they're moving closer to impeachment for Biden. And, at first I was like, well, it's about damn time. But then I was listening to an interview with Kash Patel where, he's one of Trump's like lead aides now, and he
Yeah.
worked for him in the White House. But he was saying, this is a horrible idea. We do not want this to happen because it's giving Democrats exactly what they want. Like, they know they're not going to be able to, keep Biden in the White House. The guy can't even give a debate. He can't travel. And so the best thing for the Democrats would be to get him out of the way. So then, Newsom or Michelle Obama could swoop in before the election. And he's right. Like, that's exactly what they want to happen. And, if we impeach him, that's giving them like their, get out of jail free card, basically. And what he was saying is that instead they should focus on impeaching FBI Director Christopher Wray and the DOJ's mob boss, Merrick Garland, which I totally agree. Like, those agencies are so corrupt, and they're the reason why it doesn't really matter what happens with all these congressional hearings, because they're never going to, give justice where it's needed unless it's, Trump. So like, it doesn't matter how much evidence piles up against Biden or any other Democrat. The Department of Justice, the FBI, they're not going to focus on that. They're only going to focus on conservatives. And I guess Jim Jordan subpoenaed Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland again to come in and discuss with their committee the collusion with big tech, because apparently like an FBI agent a while back lied under oath when they said that they weren't colluding with Facebook to stop the Hunter Biden laptop story from coming out. So he wants to get Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland under oath to get, their answer and see if they're going to lie under oath. But yeah, like, I do think they definitely need to go after those two. And that Vivek that we really like,
Yeah.
he's, right now, I mean, I don't trust the polling, but right now he's like second in place next to Trump.
I saw that and I thought, like, I know when I looked a couple weeks ago, he was only at like 4% or 14% or something like that. But now he's overtaken DeSantis.
Oh yeah. I think DeSantis just like really screwed his chances, which is good, because I think he's a good governor. He should stay governor. But Vivek, I do like him, and his take on it is that he will completely dismantle these institutions. He's like, there's no reforming them. It would be impossible because it's just so rotten to the core. So he's like, I would just get rid of it and completely rebuild, or instead of rebuilding, kind of like combine agencies, because he was saying that when you look at what the FBI and the DOJ are responsible for, there are other government institutions that overlap in those responsibilities. So
Yeah.
he was like, there's so much waste, we don't actually need it. And he's like, I'd pull an Elon Musk, how Elon went to Twitter and fired 70 to 88% of the people. And when he did that, what happened? It improved the performance. Things started running better because there were just too many people in the way. So this is like his take on the government. And that is why I love having people who are not politicians voted in because they actually look at it from a business standpoint of like what makes sense. And you know what? Like, fuck the FBI. Like, they took agents off of child predator cases so that they could go sit in the parking lots of school board meetings and follow parents. So screw them. Like, I'm with him on that. Um, so anyhow, like all over TikTok, the past couple of days, ever since the Maui thing, I've seen so many posts of people that are like, enough is enough. The government is against us. And they're trying to push this thing of like, okay, September 1st, no one go to work and don't spend any money, and, you know, show them that there's more of us than there are of them. And if no one purchased anything and no one showed up to work, it would cause like the whole system to halt. So this is like the latest thing that's going around TikTok, and it's gaining a lot of traction.
Well, even if that doesn't happen, it looks like we may soon end up with another situation where people won't be going to work anyway if all of these rumors about an impending new pandemic turn out to be true. And so I'm sorry, but shit is getting fucking weird. And this may seem like conspiracy, but if you look at the big picture of everything, it totally makes sense. So stick with me while I kind of go down the rabbit hole, because it's going to seem like I'm talking about shit that's not related, but I honestly believe that it is. So, this whole thing with COVID, by now, a lot of people believe that it was a manufactured virus that can be traced back to the Wuhan lab in China. And then, the whole story with the bats, right? Like there's all this shit. But now Russia, an article came out last week. Russia is questioning the origins of COVID-19 and claiming that the US is responsible and is going to plot another pandemic. So the head of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical protection troops, Lieutenant General Igor Krylov, he told the Russian state media last week that there's a US-based NGO called EcoHealth Alliance, and that they've been studying this diverse population of over 2,500 bats, looking for new COVID strains and mechanisms for animal to human transmission. And he said that Johns Hopkins University here in the US conducted the Event 201 drills in New York back on October 18th in 2019, which was just 2 months before the first COVID cases were officially reported in China. And he believes that these drills were aimed at practicing the steps that would be taken during an epidemic of some kind of unknown virus. And he said, quote, "The fact that the actual pandemic unfolded exactly according to this scenario, as well as the implementation of EcoHealth Alliance's projects, gives rise to questions as to whether COVID-19 was in fact an intentionally man-made disease and whether the US may have had a hand in this incident." So I was like, what the fuck is the Event 201 drills? Because I hadn't heard of that. And apparently, it was this simulation that was done to predict how a virus could spread from livestock to farmers. And it was like based in Brazil, and then it spread to Portugal, and then the US, and then to China. And apparently, there have been all of these conspiracy theories since early 2020 about how this simulation was meant to model or engineer the COVID pandemic. And then here's something else I didn't know, Stephanie, and this is where it gets creepy to me. So last month, the Biden administration established a new Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy. And Krylov, he believes that the US is going to go ahead with strategic plans to establish global control by creating another pandemic. And he said, quote, "This new agency is expected to be responsible for charting a course and coordinating actions to combat known and unknown biological challenges, including pathogens that might trigger another global emergency." And he believes that the US established this policy in order to prepare for carrying out a new pandemic.
Well, and didn't we find out recently that the US has biological labs for like biological weapons in
Yes.
Ukraine?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like they're sending all this money to Ukraine. Well, maybe that has something to do with it. That's where they're planning it or preparing it or whatever the hell they're doing.
It's possible. And so I went on the White House website, the wh.gov, because I'm like, where is he getting this information from? And on July 21st, they posted a fact sheet that was all about this new agency. And I just want to read two paragraphs of what it said. So it said, quote, the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy will coordinate the administration's domestic response to public health threats that have pandemic potential or may cause significant disruption and strengthen domestic pandemic preparedness. This includes ongoing work to address potential public health outbreaks and threats from COVID-19, mpox, polio, avian and human influenza, and RSV. The agency will also drive and coordinate federal science and technology efforts related to pandemic preparedness. Specifically, the agency will oversee efforts to develop, manufacture, and procure the next generation of medical countermeasures, including leveraging engineering technologies and working with Health and Human Services on next generation vaccines and treatments for COVID-19 and other public health threats. So, okay, that sounds okay, right?
Well,
But if
hold on a second, because you said you said a couple things. RSV, which
Mhm.
we know is harmful to children. And people like Bill Gates has been saying, oh, there's going to be another pandemic and it's going to be really harmful for children. Like, how would you know that? Number one. Number
Right.
two, I heard the other day that they are pushing this new RSV vaccine on infants. And apparently in the studies, like 3 infants died, but they're still pushing it. And then the avian flu. Well, what have we been seeing in these farms? They're saying, oh, all these chickens are dying from the bird flu, the avian flu, even though the farmers are saying, well, as soon as we stop feeding them this brand of food, they're okay. So, like, this is all totally being set up.
Yes, and that's the thing. It like, oh, it sounds good. But when you pay attention to the wording that they use, like you just pointed out, it's really fucking scary. And what's even more interesting to me anyway, is the timing of this new agency being created. So, I mean, everyone knows or everyone believes Alex Jones is just a conspiracy theorist, right? But he just came out with information reporting that TSA whistleblowers are saying that a couple days ago there was a closed door meeting where they were told to start preparing for the mask mandates to come back in the United States in mid-September, and that there's going to be a full-blown COVID lockdown protocols back in effect by October. And this is just in time for what? Oh, the primary election primaries.
Oh my God. And the thing with Alex Jones is he always sounds crazy, but then everything he says ends up being true. Like all
Yeah.
of it, you know? And I don't know, like I just think that they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that the elections either don't happen or are so, screwed up based on something like this that it would give evidence to why things aren't making sense and why votes are going one way or another. And then I've also heard them talking about climate lockdowns. Like it's been a big thing in Europe. And I'm thinking, okay, with all the crazy wildfires and the hurricane that's hitting Southern California and Nevada for like the first time ever, like it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't try to do some sort of lockdown and tie in all these natural disasters with that and call it a climate change lockdown.
Oh, yeah. And then here's where it gets even weirder. I read a very interesting article in the Economic Times, and it was from a couple weeks ago, but it was talking about how also stating that the next pandemic is going to come from the United States. And it said that, get this, Stephanie, this pandemic is going to be related to our meat supply. And apparently, this was originally reported by USA Today, and it was citing findings from Harvard Law School and New York University about how there's this growing vulnerability to zoonotic diseases, which is basically when a virus is easily transmitted from animals to humans, and that can create a deadly outbreak. But they were saying that because of practices in the livestock industry with commercial farming and like pigs and poultry being raised in large numbers in the United States, that this is posing a potential vector for a deadly virus outbreak. And specifically, the article talked about how the United States meat supply is a major source of zoonotic diseases because animals are raised in close proximity to humans in commercial farms, which increases the risk of virus and bacteria being transmitted from animals to humans, and that the chances of another pandemic originating from the US meat supply are real. So, Stephanie, when you look at all these things, like how fucking perfect would it be for the United States to create another pandemic, link it to our food supply, right? It's like no secret they're pushing hard to get rid of meat and farming. And what better way to gain control of the people and simultaneously enforce this crazy fucking climate agenda than combining these things together? And like maybe some of our listeners think this is far-fetched and overreaching conspiracy shit, but I mean, come on. I don't put anything past our government at this point. There are so many lies being exposed and so many corruption scandals being exposed. Like, you can't even keep up with the shit going on right now. So, things that, like I've said many times before, I thought, 2 years ago would be conspiracy. Like, I now think all of this is totally possible.
Well, yeah. And it's like when you look at the World Economic Forum agenda, the United Nations agenda, the liberal agenda, all of these things that they've been pushing on us and the people have been pushing back and are like, we're not going along with eating bugs and not eating meat. We're not buying into this climate change, bullshit, like all of this stuff. We're not buying into the whole COVID thing anymore. And so it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to voluntarily go along with it, then we're going to force you to go
Right.
along with it. I mean, look at like everything they want will happen if all of these things play out. So they're just going to force it. And why wouldn't they? No one's ever held accountable. No one goes to jail. They could do whatever the fuck they want and nothing ever happens. So I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, the fact that they're going on the world stage and admitting that, oh, yeah, there's going to be another pandemic. It's not if, but when. And oh, by the way, it's going to be 2025. And oh, by the way, it's going to affect children. But we don't really know, but we do. Like, you know what I mean? It's like they're so obvious. They're not even trying to hide it because why would they? We're never going to do anything about it. They're never going to be held accountable. And that is what is so frustrating because we all have too much to lose. So no one's going to go fight the system like our forefathers.
Yeah. But the one thing I think is weird with the timing is like, okay, the whole thing with Alex Jones saying this is gonna, start in mid-September and then affect the primaries, right? Why would you do that? Like, why not wait until the actual election, in
Maybe they're
2024?
testing it out
Yeah,
with the primaries to see if they get away with it, which they will.
they
And
will.
then, they've got their plan for the regular election. And I think, especially with the primaries, they will do anything to make sure that Trump is not in there. They're trying to keep him in jail or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
No, I agree. I just feel like if you're gonna push this, why are you gonna push it now when like a lot of people are not going to comply with this shit again like they did the first time. Some people will, but I think a lot of people won't. So wouldn't it make more sense to wait until the actual elections so that when people start pushing back, you can do the kind of shit that Zelensky did in Ukraine and then say, we're not having a fucking election, because it's a fucking state of emergency in the country?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe they don't want it to be that obvious and they know like not as many people pay attention to the primaries as they do the regular election, or maybe this is just the start of it and they're going to start it now and it's going to get progressively worse to where we are in a true state of emergency by the time the election rolls around.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, either way, like this isn't good. We know they're up to no good, but
Yeah.
no one is willing to stop them at this point. So
No. And oh, I just wanted to mention one more thing. Did you see the fucking creepy thing that Biden did last week with the ice cream?
no.
Oh my God. Yeah. He was there was a bunch of people at the White House, and he was just doing his some kind of press thing, and he invited all these children to go with him, like to get ice cream. And he said, like, I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here, and daddy owes you, so talk to me afterwards. Ugh, like,
Oh my God.
it was so fucking disturbing, and just like, ew.
Pedo Peter's coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking
Oh,
gross.
he is unbelievable. Yeah. They want him out of the way because they can't control him at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be a lot of weird things going on. There already is. This is crazy, like crazy times right now. So yeah, I guess we'll keep everyone posted moving forward. Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday.
We'll see you back here on Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.